Hello everyone. Welcome back to working with me on building this skirt. I feel like this skirt has been taking me a long time for some reason, but it's because I'm doing the video as I go along. I'm not used to doing that. So let me just adjust this here. Now, so this line, we're gonna start here. I have my ribbon, oh, shoot. I have my ribbon colors ready to go. Hold on, I'm dropping it. So these are the ribbons I'm going to use in this. So I'm going to go fuchsia, orange, blue, yellow, and green. Here. So this part is pretty basic, actually. It's just, you just take it, and since we're covering that, we're going to start about there and just to the end there and cover that. And we need one for the back also, so we'll cut two. And then so on and so on. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut all the ribbons, and then I'll come back and we'll glue them on. Okay, so I'm back. So I've cut all the ribbons, and I really like these ribbons. They're very soft. They are only one-sided. You can tell one side is really soft and the other side is not. There's 30 meters in a roll, and I like to buy the rolls because it's about 18 bucks a roll, but if I buy it separately, it's about $1.75 per meter, so it's way cheaper to buy the roll. Anyway, there's two ways. There's two ways that you can put your ribbon onto your material. One way is to use 505, which a lot of people do. This is about 20 bucks a can, so it's really expensive. The other way I like to do is I use Craft Bond glue stick, and that works also. In this case, I'm just going to use the 505 just because it's faster for video purposes. I'm going to cut off these little stray strings here. All right, so, and we want to make sure that there's no little stray pieces of thread or anything like that laying on there, because then you're gonna sewing it on there and you'll be able to tell. So give it a shake, and then just turn my air conditioner off so it's not blowing everything everywhere. And we just spray it on. All right. So I'm going to start with my fuchsia color first, and I am going to cover that seam just like that. The next color is orange, and I'm going to put it right beside the fuchsia. And then I believe the next color is blue. Hope so, because the lady I'm making this for wants it exactly like the other one I made. And then yellow. I don't know. I don't think I put some that far down. Let's see. Try not to get this on the ribbon, because if you do, it leaves weird looking little spots, I found. So that's why it's good to try to get it all on the first try, but it doesn't always work that way. And it's just tacky. It's just temporary adhesive to just tack it down so that it doesn't move. Once I get it down on there, I still like to take a push pin and just put it at the end just to hold it in place. Because as we're sewing, we're moving the material around quite a bit, and it could, the ribbons will come apart off the material a little bit. So this way they at least stay in their place. And then we can get to sewing them on. Second here. All right, so there we have it. I know I say a lot. Somebody said they watched my video and I said a lot. And I know that I say so every time I say I'm conscious of it. Anyhow, I'll get there. As my boss would say, we'll get there. So here's what it'll look like. Ooh, it's starting to be just the way I want it to look. Actually, it's not good up here, but ooh, I hope it all works out. This is the second skirt that I've made like this. All right, so I'm going to get everything set up and sew the ribbons on. I just wanted to say one quick thing that I've learned, and I've tried a couple times, is that you can use one color of thread when you're sewing all the ribbons. You can use white for to sew down the ribbons, or you can also use the same color of thread as the ribbon. So if you're doing this one, you would use green, and then yellow or green, and then blue or yellow, blue, orange, and then fuchsia. So I did that once when I made a skirt, and I used green, green, yellow, blue, orange, and fuchsia. That's how I did it. So it's really up to you what your preference is. I think it looks a little more, I guess, I don't want to say professional, but it just looks a little more hidden if you use the same color thread as the ribbons, but I just use the white to do it. And when you're sewing on the ribbons, typically you use a zigzag stitch, not a really big zigzag stitch, but I have heard of some people that use a straight stitch also. I've never used a straight stitch, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the zigzag stitch on the ribbon. So I'm going to get everything set up, and I'll be back. So one thing I forgot to mention that I learned, and that I would suggest to anyone who's new to sewing, is to use a piece of scrap cloth and test out your stitches. I wouldn't just go ahead and just start, like, set your dials and then start sewing on your project, because anything could happen. You could have the wrong stitch by accident. The thread may be not sitting right, or whatever. The tension may be wrong, or whatever the case may be. So I always use a scrap piece of cloth, and I will just play around with, that's how I found out which stitch that I like for the ribbons, because I've tried big stitches and small stitches, and when I do applique I use really small stitches so that it's nice and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to set my dial to the zigzag, and I'm going to set the length at 1 and the width at 2, and let's see what kind of stitch that gives us. I'm going to put my tension back to 2. I put the tension higher on number 4 when I was sewing just the material, just because it's so thin. you use a lower tension, the stitch underneath is too loose and it won't stay together very well. So what I found is that when you're sewing thinner material, to use a higher tension on your machine. Anyway, so here we go. Let's see what this. All right. So that's a nice size of stitch. You can see that or not. And then the back looks nice. It's not loose. It's not too tight. So, and you'll know when your stitches are too tight because it bunches together and looks really not good. So that is that one. I like to just test out going up one on the length. So that is at a number 1. Let's try a number 2 length and a 2 width and see what kind of stitch that gives us. So that, making the width bigger, or longer I should say. The stitches are a little wider in the back. I think this little scrap material is a little bit thin too, so see these stitches on this big one here looks a little bit loose if you ask me. But the setting, the number 2 setting and the number 2 width and length gives that type of stitch there, which isn't bad for ribbons. This one might be a little too close together. I wouldn't use this one. Maybe maybe for something smaller, but it's really up to you. It's really preference if you just want to do what you want to do. I don't prefer that small of stitch for the ribbons though. So let's try a 1.5. I'm just trying to get the zigzag a little bit closer together. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Maybe they're still a little too short though. I mean, you don't want the thread really showing when you're making the skirt. Maybe I'll use that. So I'm gonna set the dial at the length at 1.5 and the width at a number 2. I think I like that. I'm just gonna try one thing. I'm gonna set the dial to the width to 3 and see, and leave the length at 1.5. I wanna see what kind of stitch that gives. That's not bad. Actually, that's pretty good. I might even use that. I might use a 3. Now I'm going to stick with the 2. So I'm going to put the width at a 2, the length at 1.5, and I've tested out my scrap cloth, so I know it's all good to go. Double check your thread and your bobbin to make sure that you feel that you have enough to get you through this project, because there's nothing worse than sewing along and then all of a sudden your bobbin runs out, and then you have to stop and rethread the bobbin and then start at the same place where you ended, and you can tell. Just kind of, I don't like that, but it does happen. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. So here we go. Just going to a little bit and then back stitch. I always like to back stitch just to secure that stitch, and I'll pull my pins out as I go along. Actually, this is my, I love this little thing. I got this off of Amazon. It just goes on your wrist, this you're not always looking for your pin cushion. All right, here we go. And if you have a good sewing machine, you don't need to pull your material through. You just need to guide it. If you pull, that could probably cause problems for your machine later down the road. And that's not going to be good, so you just guide it. And when you're sewing on the ribbon, you can tell here in the foot, the edge of the ribbon should be right in between. In the foot, there's a little space. I usually keep the edge of the ribbon between that little space, and it's just right that the stitch goes on either side of the ribbon and holds it together. But you'll figure that out as you go along. Some of it is just trial and error. Doesn't have to be a lot. And there's our first sew it on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and sew the rest of the ribbons on, and then I will come back.